Hello everyone, and welcome to game number 18 of the 1960 World Chess Championship match between Mikhail Tal and Mikhail Botvinnik. And things are not looking so bright for Mikhail Botvinnik. Tal is leading the match by 3 points. It's 10-7, and he needs 12.5 points to win the match. So he needs basically 5 more draws and it's game over. Of course, he will not try to draw all of the 5 games. He will still try to play, for advantage with white and try and create something with black. But Botvinnik definitely needs to start doing something. So this game, once again, Botvinnik is white, and Tal will once again go for the Ng7 Indian defense, and Botvinnik will once again try to go for the knight h3 variation, but we'll see what happens in this game. So basically, the same variation we had in game 16 and game 14. Here, Botvinnik plays d4. Again, knight to f6, c4, e6, and knight to c3. Bishop to b4, the Ng7 Indian defense, a3, b captures on c3, b captures, and now the immediate knight to e4, like we've seen before. Queen c2, f5, like in Taimanov's book, knight to h3, and now castles. In the previous game, Tal went d6. This is now maybe not an improvement, but just taking a slightly different path, if Botvinnik prepared something special in regards of the last game. So here Tal castles, and we have f3, kicking the knight back, knight to f6, and now c5. And this c5 was Botvinnik's improvement on this variation, because he kind of knew that maybe Tal would go this way, but Tal also knew that Botvinnik already played this game and has already played this c5 move, so Tal was ready for it. c5 is excellent because it kind of prevents black from pushing b6 and d6, not really preventing it, but if you decide to push b6 or d6, you're gonna help white eliminate his double c pawn. So Tal, as he expected this, he does play b6. We have c captures on b6, and now c captures on b6. Those who are very new to chess might think that why not a captures on b6. A captures on b6 is indeed the better move, and it's indeed the principled move you want to capture towards the center. But Tal felt that he didn't really have any ideas what to do with this rook on the a file, as this pawn on a3 is very well protected. He can probably never capture it, so he decided to go a slightly different way. And if one thing he knew, that Botvinnik definitely didn't prepare for c captures on b6, because this is completely, anti-positional. Hardly Botvinnik would prepare for a variation like this. Here Botvinnik plays e3, and e3 is a great move. He doesn't fall for Tal's little trap that immediately take the center with e4. Here Tal had in mind f captures on e4, f captures on e4, and now bishop to b7 with a double attack on the e pawn. And now after bishop to d3, knight captures. So basically, it seems like Tal just randomly sacrificed a piece on e4, but not really. After bishop captures, he has queen to h4 check. And now after the knight blocks, which is the whole point of the knight being on h3, the knight also defends the bishop on e4. But now simply bishop captures on e4. And the knight, of course, is pinned. If you capture with the queen, then queen captures here. King moves, and simply knight to c6, not allowing queen to capture the rook. And the black's position is much better, probably even winning. White's completely undeveloped, and black is also up a pawn. So this was Tal's little idea with this c captures on b6, but Botvinnik plays e3, so correct. Queen to c7, and now bishop to d2. And here Tal doesn't really have an idea how to continue developing. He doesn't want to play bishop to a6. If you play bishop to a6, you're only kind of helping white. And another thing, white can simply ignore you. He can go bishop d3, and then after you capture, queen captures on d3, and this knight will not have too much fun entering the game. So basically, he doesn't want to do this. So instead, he plays knight to e8. Knight to e8 with the idea of taking advantage of the weak c4 square, as there's no longer a b pawn in white's camp. Tal's idea is something like knight to d6, followed to b7 to a5, and then from there to c4. If Botvinnik allows it, of course. So immediately c4, but now the bishop to a6 is allowed, since the c4 pawn is blocking the bishop. Rook to c1, and now knight to d6, again piling up on the c4 pawn. Queen to a4, unpinning, and now queen to c6. Tal offers a trade of queens, and here Botvinnik accepts it, but this was also Tal's little trap. So Botvinnik plays queen captures on c6, knight captures. We have bishop to b4. Now pinning that knight, kind of forcing Tal to capture the bishop on b4, as you can't really protect this knight. So Botvinnik thought, okay, Tal captures, I'm gonna improve my pawn structure, and all is well. But this was Tal's plan. Knight captures, pawn captures, and now bishop captures on c4. Tal spent 5 minutes on this move. Whether to capture with the bishop or with the knight. He decided with the bishop. This might be something Botvinnik missed, but it might be something he didn't. Who knows? Bishop captures, and now rook f to c8, simply pinning that bishop as the rook on c1 is undefended. Bishop captures on e6, giving back the piece but grabbing a pawn. Pawn captures, and now king to d2. We have king to f7, and knight to f4, and here you have the material is equal. Both players have 2 rooks, both players have 2 knights, both players have 6 pawns. But one thing you have to notice is that Tal has a majority on the queen side, and already Tal's plan is very clear. He just has to push a5, and he already created a passed pawn on the queen side. So Black's position might not be better, but it's definitely easier to play. So Tal immediately pushes it, a5. B captures, now creates a very powerful passed a pawn, king to d3, and now a4. We have rook to captures on c8, rook captures, and now rook to a1, attacking the passed pawn. And here Tal played knight to c4. This defends the pawn with the tactic that if you capture it, knight checks the king and captures the rook. But he didn't really like this move. Later after the game he thought that instead of this knight to c4, maybe rook to a8 was a better idea. But okay, knight to c4, and here rook to b1, going for that b7 square. a3, now comes rook to b7 check, king to f6, and rook to a7, now attacking the passed pawn from behind. g5 with a tempo on the knight, knight to h5 check, king to g6, and now g4. And g4 is a very interesting idea, because if you decide to play something like a2, okay, regardless of the fact that white can simply grab the pawn, the real threat is rook to g7 check, and after you move rook to f7 with the threat of rook to f6 checkmate. In this instance it doesn't really work, because black can simply block that, but then white can simply attack the pawn once again, and white is much better now here. Your pawn is attacked, your knight is attacked, everything is hanging, so it would be very hard to find a solution here for black. But another interesting thing is, when I was preparing to show you this game, I thought, okay, g4, and now I just wanted to make a silly move to show you the threat of rook to g7, and then I just played any move. I played rook to c6. I didn't even consider what effects it might have on the game, and then I saw after rook to c6, and after this rook to g7 check, king to h6, and rook to f7 threatening checkmate, that rook to c6 was actually a great move, because now black has e5, rook is guarding f6, and it's a very dangerous position now for white. You can't capture, because knight captures will check the king and win the rook on f7. So basically rook to c6 would not be a silly move. It would actually be a very nice move for Tal. But okay, after g4, first Tal played knight to b2 check, king to d2, and now knight back to c4 check, king to d3, knight to b2 check, king to d2, and knight back to c4 check. So Tal repeated knight c4, knight b2 3 times. If Botvinnik repeats king to d3, it's a draw by threefold repetition. But now Botvinnik plays king to e2. Botvinnik did not want to draw. He does have the white pieces, and he's down 3 points in the match. He just wanted to save some time and get closer to move 40 to reach time control. Here rook to c6, so the move I previously played as a silly move. We have h3, and now e5. Pawn captures, and here Tal feels that pawn captures was Botvinnik not going for most that he could. By playing d5, maybe Botvinnik would have more chances. But again, Botvinnik, as usual, was in time trouble. This is move 37, and he takes the pawn. Pawn captures. We have pawn captures on g4, pawn captures on g4, and now knight captures on e5. Rook captures on a3, rook to c2. This comes with check, and Here, this is move, like I said, 39. Botvinnik has to make move 40, and he played king to f1. King to f1 with the idea that if you play something like king to d1, attack the rook, then rook to f2, you lose this pawn. It's an instant draw by Tal. So now Botvinnik is still up a pawn, and he plays king to f1 with the idea that now if Tal captures on f3, this loses the game for Tal. And it's a very nice idea for you to pause the video here and find out why it loses the game. So feel free to pause and find beat Tal in this position. So as usual, I will give it a couple of seconds. So for those of you who found it, congratulations, you've just beaten Mikhail Tal. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the reason this loses is rook to a6 check. You have to move. You can't go to h6, you can't go here. This is all covered by the knight. You can't go here, you can't go here. This is covered by the pawn. Only move is king to f7. And here comes rook to f6 check. And now you see you lose the knight. King moves and rook captures on f3. So that's the reason you can't capture it. Here, instead of capturing, Tal played king to f7, and he felt very happy about king to f7 because he no longer had to worry about any checks and checkmates by the rook and this knight on h5. We have e4 here, and e4 was the sealed move. So here the game was adjourned, and Botvinnik had to make some move. He played f4, e4. And basically Tal and Koblenz analyzed this position entire night, so did Botvinnik, and both of them agreed that it was a draw. But Botvinnik does have the white pieces, so he still decided to play this on. Rook to d2 by Tal, king to e1, now comes rook to g2, rook to b3, king to e7, now comes knight to g7, and now knight captures on f3, finally grabbing that pawn. With the idea that after rook captures, which was played in the game, now comes rook captures on g4. So basically Tal gave up a piece, but he will grab all of the pawns. And now this pawn cannot be protected. If you try rook e3, then you get king f6, attack the knight, knight h5 check, king to e5, knight to g4, now protecting the e4 pawn, but now comes h5. With the threat of h4, and after you capture it, now rook captures on e4 is a draw. Whether you exchange rooks or not. So after rook to g4, knight to f5 check, we have king e6, knight to g3, h5 now, knight has to capture, rook captures with check, king to f2, and now king to e5. So this is basically, it's basically a draw, but you know, maybe you do have a rook and a knight against a rook and a pawn. Of course, black can blunder. So king to g3, we have rook to h4, not allowing the king to get any closer to the pawn. Knight goes to g7, rook to f4, offering a trade of rooks. If Tal is able to exchange rooks, then it's immediately a draw. Rook to a3, and now rook to d4, preparing to meet any checks with simply rook blocks. Rook to a6, rook blocks, rook goes to a7, now rook goes back, not allowing the king to go anywhere near the pawn. Rook to f7, now comes again rook to f4, offering a trade, rook checks, king goes to f6, rook to a7, and now rook back to e4, not allowing the king to get closer to the pawn, and also if the rook checks the king, then king takes knight. So knight to h5 check, king again attacks knight, and now king to f3, attacking the rook. Rook to b3, rook to b4, knight to g3, rook to f4 check, king moves rook to f7, we have rook to a5, again rook to f6, knight to e4, attacking the rook, rook f5 offering a trade, rook to a6 check, king g7, knight to g3, rook to e5, king attacks rook, and now rook to b5, again not allowing the king anywhere further than the fourth rank. King e4, now king f7, knight to f5, king checks, and now knight blocks. We have rook back, knight to f3, and now rook checks again. We have knight blocks again, rook b1, and now knight to c6. King to g6, knight opens up a double check, king to h5, and now rook to a5. Here rook to e1 check, king to f3, rook to f1, king to g3, and now rook to f4. And here, after so many attempts, Botvinnik finally decided to accept the draw in game 18. Doesn't really matter, rook a7, you don't really have any threats, king will simply go back, and there's no way for this king to approach the position. So yeah, this was game 18. I do hope you enjoyed it. I will probably cover game 19 today as well, and then tomorrow we will probably be able to finish this very long and very exciting series, Tal versus Botvinnik 1960 World Chess Championship match. So yeah, I mean, I'm planning to, but I'm not saying that I will like 100%. So yeah, I really do hope you enjoyed it, and I do hope you enjoy all the rest of the games until the end of the series. And for those of you who are maybe new to this channel and new to this series, in the description below you will find links to check out all of the games from this match, and also I do recommend you check out my coverage of the 1959 Candidates tournament, the tournament Mikhail Tal had to win to get this opportunity to play against Mikhail Botvinnik. So yeah, a lot of things happening. I would like to thank Martin Thomassen, Dame Pletvarec, Don Dugan, Josh Huff, and Malcolm Brown for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. I will make both of them from this match, Tal versus Botvinnik. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with game 19 of the Tal Botvinnik series. Thank you all.